This is a good one here. This is Jack from Michigan. Jack, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Hi. So I guess like with everything that we've talked about, like, with the Olympics and like, I guess like the Christian privilege or whatever. So I've looked at, so Tim, I've been following the new evangelicals for a little while here and there. I know you guys stand against Christian nationalism, but like what, in your personal opinion, I know because it depends on who you ask, but like just you specifically, how would you describe Christian nationalism, I guess?
Yeah, great question. In a nutshell, it is a specific brand of Christianity that's usually conservative that believes it has a right to shape culture and politics. So the belief is America is or was a Christian nation, and that Christians like these particular people have an obligation to kind of take back the country and make it Christian again. And I want to be clear, by Christian, I don't mean the forgive debt every couple of years and take care of the poor kind of Christianity. I mean, it's very hierarchical in nature. How are things ordered? Who's at the top of this hierarchy? Who's at the bottom? Who assimilates into what? And usually, whether they realize it or not, they're drawing on some form of white supremacy. So that's what it comes from. One of the most common expressions of that today, like in our cultural moment, is called the Seven Mountain Mandate. Okay, this is a belief popularized by the New Apostolic Reformation. Lance Wallnau is the person who kind of popularized it. And again, there's a whole world and universe here, but it essentially says that, hey, God has given us a mandate to take over the seven mountains of culture. So I don't know all seven. It's like government, business, the arts, entertainment, finance, family, and there's one more, culture, something like that. And so the belief is that people like these Christian nationalists are being called by God. And we cannot forget this, friends. And this goes back, I was talking to Kelly behind the scenes about this a little bit, about what drives what. Is it the theology, or is it the politics that drives the theology, or theology that drives the politics? This is one of the reasons why I'm not totally sold on any definitive answer, because there is a theology that animates the belief that God has called us to take dominion over society and to make it Christian again, to maybe usher in the reign of Christ or the end times, or to make America godly again. So that's what we're talking about. It's not just a Christian advocating for a belief based on their personal conviction that might have a common value that like me and Dan share, right? Of like, hey, we want healthcare for all of our neighbors. Dan might get there differently than I do from a belief standpoint, but it's a common value. Christian nationalism advocates for exclusively Christian nationalist ideals, like, for example, Doug Wilson, one of the most terrifying in my opinion, who has told me that he wants to put Christ is Lord in our Constitution.
Yeah.
That's a real thing he's told me. That's an exclusive claim that then cuts out. There's no value that Dan can find to find a common agreement that would say, yes, that's a good idea. So it really is about Christian supremacy ultimately.
Okay, good points. I definitely agree with you. I do lean more on the conservative side, but yes, I agree with you. I strongly disagree with a lot of Wilson's attitudes. Like, even though there might be a couple things here and there that I agree with, that doesn't mean like a vast majority of what he says. I mean, almost anybody, you can find at least one thing that they agree with that you're like, okay, I agree with that, but your main message, I ditch that, or I reject that.
Yeah, no, right. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, like, yeah, actually, no, I'm not going to say that because that might trigger some people. But so we'll see how that has. But I guess my next question would be like, would you say that like, and I've heard mixed opinions on this, but I don't know if I ever heard your opinion on this, or if you ever said this in like a video or a live stream, like, or the podcast. But would you say like 2 years ago, Roe v. Wade was overturned? Would you say that was a form of Christian supremacy or Christian nationalism?
Yeah, just two quick things here. And I love this call, Jack. This is awesome. And by the way, I want to be very clear. There's a world of difference between a conservative and a Christian nationalist. Okay, just to be very emphatic about that. They are not the same. Russell Moore is a good example of a conservative Christian who would probably hold conservative views, but would also not be a Christian nationalist for a litany of reasons. So I want to just acknowledge that I don't think that you're a Christian nationalist because you might hold more conservative views than I do. That's totally reasonable. To your point, Roe v. Wade was overturned because of a Christian nationalist agenda behind the scenes putting certain justices in front of Trump. There's a famous picture of Trump having, the term is called, well, you know this probably, Jack, but maybe not the rest of the audience, having having hands laid on him by all of his different leaders, these worship leaders and these pastors, right? This is like a way of them saying, hey, we know that you're going to do what we need you to do. And part of that is overturning Roe v. Wade. So I don't know if the actual justices themselves are all Christian nationalists necessarily, but certainly the funding, the groups that push for it, the people that push for Trump to get in office were absolutely animated by the belief or the beliefs of Christian nationalism. And for anyone who wants a source on this, Andrew Whitehead, a great sociologist, I have him on my show at once a month, wrote a book called American Idolatry that really is a great icebreaker or foundational primer for what Christian nationalism is and isn't.
Right. So I guess like my question is like, so yes, I've seen that picture of like, a lot of the Bethel people, Greg Laurie, Michael Tate from Newsboys, like, a bunch of like, influential, Christian musicians, pastors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, praying over Trump. I get that. I guess my next question with that specifically is like, well, I guess I have two questions. So they're different, but they kind of go together. So like with the praying over Trump, a lot of these people, even though, yes, a lot of them did support Trump, they said, hey, if the opportunity came up, we would gladly go pray over President Biden. And some of them even prayed over President Obama. And they said, the only reason we haven't is because we weren't invited. So I guess like, what's wrong with praying over the president, even if we personally don't agree with them? Like they said they would pray over someone who they completely disagree with. And they would be on, like Greg Laurie even said, I would be on President Biden's faith council. He hasn't asked me though. That's the only reason I haven't been on his faith council.
Yeah.
So I guess that's part one. But
okay.
And then the other thing is, I know you've talked a lot about, especially over the past few months, about how our democracy is at risk. In a way, I do agree with that. But like, I guess my question is, and if this is a trigger warning, you don't want to respond to this, cool, jump over it, whatever. I won't be offended. But like back in the 1800s, a vast majority of people supported slavery. So wasn't technically making that illegal, wasn't that anti-democracy? Like, I guess what's the difference?
Well, we fought a civil war over slavery. I just think that overall the circumstances were very different than what we're dealing with now. And I do want to be careful because I represent a nonprofit organization. So me personally, I don't want to come across as, saying the wrong thing that could get my own status in jeopardy. So I'll just kind of be a little vague here and kind of broad, just to answer your question. And you can also DM me on my Instagram. I can talk to you more about this offline for sure. I love DMs. But just to be clear, I actually responded to Greg Laurie saying that on my Instagram. And my point to Laurie was, I said, because Greg Laurie claimed to have all this influence with the former president, right? And my response was, where's the influence, dude? Like, I mean, but we can all see the fruit of all of that stuff. We all saw what happened on January 6th. So maybe the next guy who got in office was like, maybe I don't want that guy in my ear, given the fruit of that, So that's kind of how I think about this. And frankly, and this is pure speculation on my part, so you can take it or leave it. I fully understand if people would disagree with me. Given my understanding and experience, and also awareness of how people like President Obama was treated by white evangelicals, I actually don't believe the claim that these people would go to the White House to pray with those people. Maybe some of them would, but at this point, the evangelical fundamentalist world is so militant that any evangelical pastor who would go to the White House to pray over a Democratic president would be absolutely lambasted by his own people. And I know this because I'm watching it happen on Twitter all the time. As you know, Russell Moore, who again, a conservative, non-affirming, pro-life evangelical, has been tossed to the side like roadkill by a militant fundamentalism because he dare say that maybe the MAGA movement is not very Christ-like. So I just don't really buy the argument, although, again, that's more speculation. That's kind of my response to that.
Yeah. I mean, we've had a Democratic president for the last 4 years, that plenty of people can come up and say, you know what, let's go and pray for this person. And I just personally haven't seen the same for, let's say other candidates, but anything else, Jack?
Yeah, I guess like, I don't know. So like, I I don't know. I definitely get it. Like, I don't support, Christian, bases in law, I guess, necessarily. Like, I don't support, like, I don't think we should make laws out of the 10 Commandments. I don't think that would be good, though I do think murder and stealing, those violate, our, basic human rights. So yes, I'm okay with those things stay illegal, obviously. But the thing is like, I don't know. I mean, like, I think, like, the thing is that, like, I don't know, like, my only question is like, like, a bunch of people, like, I guess this bothers, like, just what doesn't sit well with me. And not just with you, like, I have nothing against you, Tim, but the thing is, like, okay, I'm just trying to figure out the best way to put it. Like, I guess, like, I get, democracy matters, but the thing is like, a vast, like, a vast majority of people supported slavery in the 1800s. And people said, no, this is not right. This is a sin. We can, well, not sin necessarily, but this is an injustice. We cannot allow this to keep going on. And people fought against it, which was great that they did that. But, like, I guess, why is that different than Christians or, yes, even atheists? Because there are, like, several organizations that I even personally follow, and I'm even, friends with a few people from these who, like, they're pro-life atheists or pro-life agnostics or any other groups. Like, why is that any different than them saying, like, fighting against, like, abortion, I guess?
I mean,
the ultimate answer is one was race-based chattel slavery, enslaving fully sentient born human beings for life and usually sexually assaulting them in the process. And the other, we're talking about what happens when someone gets pregnant, oftentimes unintentionally, or gets pregnant in a world where they can't afford to have a child. And and also the fact that most abortions happen before the first or before the second trimester. So I just see this as kind of apples and oranges. And Jack, I understand. Let me just empathize with you. I understand where you're coming from. I really do. And I don't want to make light of what is a very serious topic and how we navigate, very key issues. We have to talk about abortion. We have to have real conversations about that. That's totally fair. But to kind of, I hear often some people in this world kind of equate the two, which is why there's what's called the abolitionist movement, right? It's these abortion abolitionists who have literally appropriated the term and who now want to punish women who get abortions because their logic is abortion at any stage is murder, and therefore the person getting an abortion and the doctor performing it are murderers, which honestly is the pro-life logic taken to its logical conclusion. And I know that because at age 15, I wore a shirt that said abortion is homicide on the front of me. It was in all caps. That's what I was taught. So they're actually being logically consistent. But I think that movement is incredibly dangerous. And honestly, as we've seen with the data, like Texas, for example, when you restrict access to abortion, infant mortality rates have gone up, not down. It has the opposite effect. So I know that we're a little long-winded here. And again, I'm happy to talk to you offline. I've interviewed leading embryologists who are in the top of their class, leading the charge on IVF and what it is. You can go back to those episodes and listen. You can DM me anytime. That's just kind of my take on it.
Yeah. And
I mean, like,
real quick, Jack, I'll give you just a few, like 30 minutes, 30 seconds to a minute for a response, and then we'll let you go. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right, great. Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I guess, like, like, for me personally, like, I'm, like, and I know, like, maybe I'll DM you later and we can discuss this more, Tim, because I know you'll have more questions, which is quite cool. But, like, I guess for me personally, like, I'm not, like, I don't stand with the abolitionist movement because I think that women are just as much victims as the children. So it's kind of like how, like, I think the person who's performing the abortions, I think they're the ones who should be punished. Kind of like how, like, when with the drug addict and the drug dealer, it's usually the drug dealer who goes to prison, not the drug addict. But yeah, I guess that's just my opinion. But yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, Jack. Well, thanks for calling in.
Hey, appreciate your time, man. Thanks for coming in. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Appreciate that conversation. Gosh, I have so many thoughts that I want to say to that. But we got another caller here, which I think is gonna be really good. And then I think we'll do that last call. But I don't know. I don't know what I want to say that is gonna drag the conversation down even more. I think what you said was really good. I'll say from the atheist perspective, why I'm interested in Christian nationalism not being, the de facto mode of operating. Is purely just because I'm not a Christian anymore, right? So what Christians think about how they should be organizing my life is not what I want to happen, right? I don't want to have to go to a school that puts more money into making sure that the 10 commandments are put up rather than the kids being safe from school shooters, right? I don't want to live in a country where women can't get access to the healthcare that they need, or that trans people can't get access to the healthcare that they need, or that whether gay people can't adopt the children that they want because the adoption agency doesn't want them to. Sometimes morality isn't the democratic consensus, and sometimes action has to be made in order to rectify that. What you think is going to be right or wrong, that might depend on your value system. What I care about is human rights, though, and what I care about is the interests of human beings. And Christians' interests, by and large, whether they're on my side or not, that matters less to me. I matter about the person, regardless of their belief, more importantly in my own personal hierarchy. But there you go.
Well, just to be clear, there are Christian nationalists out there, mainly a guy named Stephen Wolfe wrote the book A Case for Christian Nationalism, who has said on the record that in his world of Christian nationalism, atheists are thrown in jail, blasphemy laws are enforced, and atheism is crushed. I mean, I literally have a quote from him saying this on his podcast on my Twitter. Like, you can pull it and prove it. So, I mean, frankly, I'm concerned for you as well, because there are Christian nationalists out there who, if they get the power that they want, we're living in quite literally the Handmaid's Tale, and the fact that many of them don't care about democratic norms and don't care about, working with their neighbor, but they care about conquering their neighbor, it's incredibly problematic to me.